All right, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. We will now call the meeting of the Waco MPO Policy Board of April 18, 2024 to order at 1:33 p.m. MPO staff, has this meeting been posted?
Yes.
And I do not think we have any councils to be called into session. We begin with our public hearing. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO Policy Board on any agenda item. Please complete a speaker's registration card with MPO staff. Speakers will be allotted one presentation at the beginning of the agenda for each agenda item the speaker wishes to address. Please note that each action item will have a separate public hearing later in the agenda. Speakers have the option of addressing the board either at this time or at either time, but you will only be allowed one opportunity to address the board per agenda item. And Daniela has the same message, but en español.
Brindamos una oportunidad para que el público se dirija a la Junta de Políticas de MPO sobre cualquier tema de la agenda. Completa una tarjeta de registro de orador por el personal de MPO. A los oradores se les asignará una presentación al comienzo de la agenda por cada tema de la agenda que el orador desea abordar. Tenga en cuenta que cada punto de acción tendrá una audiencia pública separada más adelante en la agenda. Los oradores tendrán la opción de dirigirse a la Junta en cualquier momento, pero solo se le permitirá una oportunidad para dirigirse a la Junta Directiva por punto del orden del día.
For items not on today's agenda, there's a separate hearing of visitors at the end of the meeting. And according to MPO staff, we do not have any registered speakers today. So we will move on to agenda item 3, approval of the minutes. And we will consider approval of the March 21st, 2024 MPO Policy Board meeting minutes. A copy of those minutes were provided in the meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as submitted? Hearing none, they will be approved as presented. We now move on to review, discussion, and action regarding evaluation criteria for the 2050 MTP Call for Proposals framework. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you. So the most important part that at the last meeting we left hanging was the weighting outcome result. And so this is the final weighting for all the different categories that is in front of you. And you would notice that economic development is going to have a weight of 14.02. And the next highest are safety and regional impact. And some of the items, non-motorized path element, comprehensive mobility solution, transit and tourism related traffic, they are lower in their weight. So this is the final weight based on 31 responses that we received out of 40 members who were invited. 40 members included all of policy board, all of technical advisory committee, and the MTP steering committee. And from these 31, we are 90% confident that these weights represent the 40 people's opinion within 6 percentage point or 0.06 one way or the other of these numbers. So basically, to put it succinctly, this is a really good weighting outcome we have received from all of your participation. And so what we're proposing is that this is what we adopt for this meeting. For the next call for proposal. Next slide, please. A few items that we wanted to remind everyone is that on March 25th, call for proposal opened. April 4th was the technical advisory committee where we had the first workshop related to these criteria. April 18th, that is today, this is the final weighting that we are requesting you to approve these. We will hold another workshop on May 2nd at technical advisory committee. June 21st is the final date by which time all the projects to be considered for the next MTP needs to be submitted. The month of July is reserved for proposal evaluation period. And then coming back in the August, we will present the tentative list of prioritized list of MTP proposals for the policy board consideration, and we'll seek your authorization to go ahead with a public meeting based on those. Next slide, please. So this MTP, there are a couple of things that we want to make sure that we're on the same page. So the policy board is responsible for making sure that the regional vision that you have drafted for yourself actually gets implemented through the long-range planning process. And this call for proposal framework, the way we are presenting, this is our attempt at translating that vision into the kind of outcome that will be consistent with the long-term vision for the region that Policy Board has drafted. And so in terms of final outcome, it will look like a prioritized list of transportation projects all across the McLennan County. One of the items that we wanted to bring to your attention is, and this was a question MTP Steering Committee was grappling with at its last meeting, what do we do with the proposals that are already under some stage of engineering and right-of-way acquisition? So these are the projects on which TxDOT or the cities have already invested significant sums of money in order to make the projects go forward. So MTP Steering Committee's recommendation is to treat all of these projects as higher than the prioritized list so that these projects do not necessarily change in their priority list. They move forward because these projects, and in a moment, I'll give you the list of all the projects that qualify in that category. These are the projects which we have been discussing for quite some time. And so that's one recommendation that came from that. We already mentioned about the vision statement and the input that we have received. As we said, we are very happy with the way the criteria weight has come about. One of the roles that we wanted to make sure that we all understood, since this is the first time for the MTP that we're changing how we propose these projects, just to give you a bit of a background, until now, most of the times, any project that was to be considered, people simply called the MPO, and the MPO director took down the notes on the proposal and then evaluated with the staff. We're changing the system in which we're making sure that every project has to have a sponsor that is a city or the county. And then MPO staff will not be evaluating projects at all. The project evaluation will be done by an evaluation team, and the final prioritized list will be presented to the policy board for your consideration to make any changes. So once you complete the proposal form in Decision Lens, it will also allow you to collaborate not only with different cities, but also with TxDOT. And one of the things we want to do is to make sure that the city that is sponsoring a project has had a meeting with TxDOT to discuss the project before it is submitted into the MTP proposal. Next meeting. So one of the things we are going to do is that this month we are going to be scheduling several meetings. And in each of these meetings, for the policy board members, we are expecting some of you to be there. But if you can't, the most important person really is your representative at the TAG, who will actually be filling out and completing the project evaluation, the project proposal form. And so in this case, these are the meetings that we have left. We already had a meeting with City of Belmead and Waco, McGregor, Hewitt, Lacey, Lakeview, Woodway, Robinson, and McLennan County, all the smaller cities. And so far we have had requests from City of Riesel and City of West. And in each of those meetings, we will expect the McLennan County representatives to be spearheading those meetings. And so in each of these meetings, we will send the invitation to the TxDOT group. The most important person from TxDOT is going to be Victor in that meeting. And so several of his team members will be in that meeting as well. I just sprang a surprise on him. And so with this meeting, what will be the case is that we would have had a fair bit of idea about what the nature of the project is, and we'll have discussion not only based on what the city's opinion on these projects are, but also what is allowed, what is not allowed, and also understand the utility relocation and all the related aspects to that. Next slide. So these are the projects that we.
Back to that.
Yes.
You're going to facilitate the Riesel and the West Main.
Yes, we'll schedule a meeting with the county, these cities, and TxDOT.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is when?
We would like to have these meetings before the end of this month so that we have plenty of time.
Before the end of April?
Yes.
Okay.
And so in that meeting, we'll invite the respective, so for the county and the small city meeting, we'll invite both you and Judge Felton, and it's entirely up to you, but at the minimum weeks, we'll expect Zane to absolutely be present at that meeting.
Okay.
These are the projects that we as part of, again, we have had to change some of these things. This is the first time we're implementing a framework like that. And so we decided that these are the projects, we'll still evaluate them, assign some score, but they will not be part of the prioritized list. So these projects are going to move forward. That is the recommendation from MTP Steering Committee. These are all the projects in which, so these are listed in our TIP in Appendix D, and these are scheduled for 2029 and beyond. And these are the Loop 340, Hewitt Drive to Lake Drive on US 84, Watts Interchange, McGregor Bypass, Blue Parkway on 317, and the FM 434, that's the University Parks between Baylor and Garden Drive. So these are the projects that we want to make sure that they do not get bumped out of our prioritized list so that they can keep moving forward.
All right. So moving on to our discussion, we wanted to specifically, given that this is the 2050 MTP call for proposals framework, and given the changes and maybe what we've learned from projects and past MTPs, wanted to see if either Stan or Mayor Meek or both might have some input or comment on any of these.
So let me say this, the engineer and me really appreciated 100th of a decimal place on the weights. The MTP process, so 2050, I don't know how many of us will be in this room here, but this lays a blueprint for us to work towards. You know, I've said this before, this forum, that TxDOT, we want to do what the community wants and what the region wants, and using and just scanning those weights. They fit hand in glove with what TxDOT is really all about. We have a lot of other things that change along the way. Availability of funding, money that we already spent, maybe needs, especially say on the interstate, for example, which serves more than just. But well, Josh and I were talking before the meeting, half of the peak hour traffic on the interstate in Waco is local traffic. So Josh was gonna be kind of surprised, but that's what the facts point out. So while TxDOT may have other things that we worry about that we don't worry about in this form, this process for MTP, I think, is important because it will outlast most of the people in this room. I can't speak for my predecessors in my position, but I'm here to do what this forum wants with the monies that we have, you know, jurisdiction over, or what we got. The thought that went into this process, I've been associated with other MPOs and other portions of the state, and sometimes they just don't fit priorities. They kind of fit local desire as opposed to a priority, like what you have in the weighting system. So I applaud the team that put that together. And you know, we're going to support whatever out of this process.
Thank you, Stan. Appreciate that. And it seems like this kind of builds in with TAC, definitely kind of a feedback throughout the project that may help avoid kind of back end. It's a little more front end and ongoing process driven than having to kind of unwind or fix problems that could have been solved by better planning or discussion ahead of time. Do you feel like that?
I appreciate this discussion about projects that we're already working on, because a lot of times the things that we prioritize out of the policy board, TxDOT, we start spending money on that. And again, every one of those projects up there is important. So again, previous experience, sometimes we would spend money and then just jettison a project because the local whim, which we don't seem to have in this policy board, the local whim would just jettison a project and we just wasted money for nothing. So I think that's important too.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other comments about the 2050 MTP call for proposals framework? Yeah.
So one of the things that is going to be important for this meeting, in preparation for the meeting, that whichever project that you have in mind, that you do communicate it, and in that meeting, we would like to go ahead and discuss and take note of these projects and be able to give appropriate advice as well. And so that's one of the reasons. So far, We have had these one meeting with City of Belmead, but we expect to have the same meeting in which some of your high priority projects can be discussed thoroughly so that we can bring them into the proposal process in the most appropriate way. At that meeting, we will also sort of walk you through the decision lens process, what it looks like and such, so that that's not a convenient. But throughout the process, one of us, we're there to help and support in every possible way.
Anyone else?
At our meeting, right, so we're good there. We
Yes.
can do anything else, right?
Yes.
Want to make sure,
That's right, that's one.
one and done.
That's right. So do we have a motion to direct MPO staff to utilize the final draft of the MTP call for proposals framework?
So moved. Second.
All right, got a motion from our Vice Chair, Mr. Thomas, and a second from Mr. Zachary from Belmead. Any discussion? All right, all in favor indicate by upright right hand, uplifted right hand. All opposed by same sign. All right, motion carries unanimously. We will move on to review, discussion, and action, directing MPO staff to finalize the draft of revised bylaws to be adopted by the Waco MPO Policy Board immediately following redesignation by the governor.
So I think I probably need to give a little bit of background here. So as this process has been moving through, we had submitted the 3 resolutions, one from the county, one from City of Waco, one from City of Hewitt, which constitutes 75% of the population of the MPO planning area. Along with the policy board's resolution for request for redesignation, we had a conversation with the TxDOT's legal counsel, and they suggested that while they're preparing the package, that they also include a few related items, because in their opinion, governor's packet needs to be complete with all the changes simultaneously that is expected as part of this. And so the most important one were the two, well, actually there are 2 important items that they asked us to include. They said that the bylaw needs to reflect what the governor's action will entail. We told them that, well, we can't really change the bylaw until governor has taken the action. So it does not make any, we can't really do that. It won't be appropriate. And so what we came up with was that there should be a draft of the changes in the bylaw, which policy board will commit to changing. It simply refers to the redesignation portion. In a moment, I'll show you exactly what that is. And based on that, the new planning agreement that is due in September will reflect that change into it. So let's go to the next slide. So the most important change is that in the whereas portion of the bylaw in the very first page, when earlier it said, whereas the City of Waco has been designated, it will say, whereas the Waco MPO Policy Board has been redesignated by the governor, and then it will add another whereas clause into the front of the page in the bylaw. And so we're not making the change right now. All we're saying is that we will attach this document in the governor's package in which they will be requesting. And what we're effectively saying is that once the governor signs off on it, that we will bring this up to the policy board to make this change to the bylaw. Right now, it will not be appropriate for us to make any such change until the governor has taken the action.
So we're directing staff to present this draft to the governor's office. Then once approved, it would then come back to us to authorize this change to the bylaws.
Exactly. Yes. And since we were making this change, we decided to go through some of the FY 2010 and replace them with FY 2020 and those minor changes. But the most important change is this one.
Any discussion on this change regarding the redesignation draft bylaws to be submitted to the governor? Need action on this for direction? Okay. Do we have a motion to so direct staff?
So,
Second.
We've got a motion by Ms. Emerson and a second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor, lift up the right hand. All opposed by same sign. It passes unanimously. We will move on to review, discussion, and action, directing MPO staff to convene a rebranding task force for Waco MPO to prepare recommendations to the policy board as follow-up steps in anticipation of the governor's redesignation.
So we have discussed this several times based on the strategic planning discussions that we have had. And I'm very happy to announce that Councilman Bordeaux has agreed to chair this rebranding task force. And so the idea was that instead of hurrying through it, we will take our time and think through a lot of these items and keep bringing it to the policy board for consideration, reconsideration on what needs to happen. One of the items that have been discussed in the past was to consider renaming Waco MPO to Heart of Texas MPO, which was in short form will look like Hot MPO. And I can assure you that I would not like to wear that logo under my name and be at the Association of MPO meeting, Hot MPO. But either way, this is the prerogative of the rebranding task force and the policy board. And therefore, today what we are requesting is that we think through all the necessary steps that we need to take our time. It will probably be at least 4 or 5 months of discussion and deliberations before we make any final judgment and bring forward for your action. And so today we are requesting that you give us the directive to create this rebranding task force. And we are working with the assumption that Councilman Bordeaux will chair this task force, and we'll have a few more members from the policy board as well as technical advisory committee to be included in that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a done deal that, number one, the name necessarily will be changed, or that even the graphic design will be redesigned, although that seems pretty pressing. Although I do like kind of our planes, trains, and automobiles design there. So I think the idea is like, let's convene, let's talk about, do we want to project a more regional image? Do we want to refresh the graphic design and maybe some of the way we, whether it be social media or communications, but just kind of looking at these, the way in which we project the MPO out into the public. And, I think that you probably, your point as to Hot MPO, that probably would be what it would be called if we change it to that, although you could wear the full name on the tag. But yeah, like a Waco area MPO would probably be in your world called Wampo or something like that, right? I mean, kind of like capital areas called Campo. So that's something to think of too, is just like naming a child, maybe look at the initials too. Just, you never want it to be something that'll be a playground fodder for bullying, of course, but that would be something we take up. So if any of y'all are interested in that, feel free to either email MPO staff or me to serve on a process like that.
So if we do elect to change the name, then the bylaws can be changed again?
So that's why the timing would work out well, because we probably will not be making the changes most likely till September or so.
Okay.
So we have plenty of time to bring, so we'll
So we
bring.
could catch it before the final bylaw?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think we're just kind of waiting on this getting in line for approval. We didn't want to get ahead of ourselves with the redesignation, but wanted it to work in concert too. So to your point. Any comments on that, or?
Mr. Chairman, I think that Dr. Kumar lacks imagination in his name tag. But I think that would be great. I hope you can share.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any comments or discussions on that? All right. Well, can we have a motion to direct MPO staff to so convene the rebranding task force? So, Mr. Bell, and second by City Manager Emerson. Any discussions? All in favor, raise right hand. All opposed by same sign. Carries unanimously. We will move on now to updated discussion from staff regarding current grant efforts.
So the most important one is that FY 2022 planning grant, the comprehensive safety action plan development that is in progress. We're getting very close to finishing it up, and primarily because we want as many implementation grant proposals to be sent out from different cities across McLean County as possible. So far, we have had discussions from at least 3 cities that are actively considering submitting. 2 of them, MPO staff is directly involved with these implementation grants, one from City of Bellmead and one from City of Waco. And we are also in consideration, it is our understanding that City of McGregor is considering one as well, so is City of Robinson. And so we want to be able to work and help with that as much as possible. FY 2023 grant is in progress, and we'll give you more update as we have significant amount. But the most important point I wanted to make is that for the FY 2024, there are 2 items. There are implementation grants from all the cities, and every city that is applying, it needs to make sure that it has a unique employer identity number, which I'm assuming that most of the cities already have. Anytime you receive any federal grant, it typically is based on that UEI number. If you don't, then we need to hurry up and make sure that you apply through the sam.gov, and we can get it done relatively quickly. And at the same time, there is the supplemental planning grant that the MPO is going to draft very soon and go ahead and send it forward. And this would be primarily for McLennan County sign inventory project, in which one of the items we have discovered throughout this comprehensive safety action plan development process, that in rural parts of McLennan County, the highest contributing factor are hit objects. And in many cases, those fatality and serious injuries could at least be positively influenced by having appropriate signage. And so the sign inventory will not only be about the exact location of signs, but also it will measure reflectivity of the signs and make sure that these signs are in appropriate format. So that's the supplemental planning grant that the MPO will put together in working very closely with the with the McLennan County. But within that sign inventory proposal, one of the things we want to make sure is that any city that is interested in being included, we would like to include every city. We know that the city of Waco already had a sign inventory, so it will not be participating in it. However, and city of Robinson has an existing sign inventory as well. So all the cities that are already actively pursuing, they don't need to be part of it. But any city that does not currently have a sign inventory, we highly encourage you to be included in it. We'll send you an email to confirm that you want to be included, and then we'll move forward with that. Is there anything you wanted to add, Zane, to it?
No, this is a great opportunity. If your city has or does not have, to get on board to find out what signs are in your city, whether they're a stop sign, yield sign, children, school crossing signs, all kinds of signs, reflectivity, the appropriateness, but also if you have an inventory, it may not be updated, you may want to still get on the bandwagon so that you can update, have this process update your inventory, and then put it into a database. You will be given a database for y'all to use. And then from that point, it should be a little easier tracking signs that get stolen, get knocked out due to accidents, or get run over, or whatever. I mean, so we think it's a win-win type project.
So, any other question on that one? Because it seems like a pretty straightforward before I get to some of the other items. So FY 2023 RAISE grant is in the process, and before the end of the summer, before we will have it executed and go through the process, and it will start up quite significantly with City of Waco. Majority of it is in City of Waco, and portion of it is also in City of Woodway. And so City of Waco, City of Woodway, and TxDOT among 3 with the MPO will be completing that part. Another project that I wanted to bring to your attention is the MPO will also put together a proposal under the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. And we have an active transportation plan, which has been quite influential in making sure that the TA projects and NetSIP projects get directed accordingly. And most cities, it also helps cities prepare the project proposal, and it is in need of an update. However, we also think that we need to use this opportunity for 2 purposes. One is that TxDOT is preparing a statewide active transportation plan, but their transportation plan is largely focused on making these long distance connections for biking and pedestrian across really long distances. What we think is missing in all of this is often context specific nuanced approach, so that pedestrian and bike infrastructure really needs to serve the immediate neighborhood rather than only the very long distance connectivity. So what we want to do is that we want to discuss making a proposal here, and under this ATIIP we have so the federal higher administration. This is going to be quite competitive because the total amount for the whole country is $44.55 billion, and all the local and regional governmental organizations are eligible to apply for this project. And the last item we had that I wanted to bring up is the discussion related to, so in 2 weeks from today, we have called for a special meeting, and at that special meeting, there will be 2 items. One will be a Vision Zero resolution, and then the other one will be the adoption of a concise CSAP. The reason why we call this meeting is because for the 2024 SS4A implementation grant, we learned that the project proposals can only be made if they're included in a CSAP, and that CSAP must be adopted prior to April 30th. This was a bit of a rude surprise, and so we decided to hurry up, and thankfully our consultant was able to accommodate the timing so that we will have a completed CSAP ready for you to consider and adopt at that April 29th meeting. We also opened the public comment period from March 31st to April 29th on the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And this meeting on April 29th will be at 8:30 a.m. and it will be at 401 Franklin Avenue, the Development Center in downtown Waco. And those are the 2 items. We expect this meeting to be no more than 15 minutes, except that we are not eligible for participation or meeting our quorum through virtual attendance. And so at least 10 of you or your proxy have to be there at that meeting in order for us to actually hold the meeting, adopt the resolution as well as CSAP.
If we had one out-of-county entity that was on this board, that would allow us to go virtual for these hearings. But being a board that's entirely composed of McLennan County entities, we were bound by that in-person quorum requirement now under kind of the new state rules. So, but would we be authorized for breakfast tacos and or coffee or some kind of courtesy, especially, and I would say to Daniela and others that are sending out the communications, maybe the reminder, not only that this is 8:30 in the morning, but also that it's at the May Jackson Development Center downtown, because my default would be to come to South Waco here. So just appreciate all of y'all just in advance, trying to make it out here for a very quick meeting so we can just get that moving forward. Coming out here, but there.
We intentionally thought that 8:30 will work best because that way you can start your day, get through this, and by 9 o'clock you would be back in your office. That was the reasoning behind keeping it at 8:30 so that you can get done with this fairly quickly.
Any other questions or comments on any of those grant items? All right, we move on to the update and discussion from the TAC. Is that
Maybe not here?
I do not.
Okay.
Her was that accident. So she's probably.
Oh,
All right. Is there anything, Dr. Moore, you'd like me to cover? Those items? So we've talked about review and the call for proposals framework and the weighting exercise. We had a very good turnout for that, and y'all saw that exercise results a while ago. We did have a workshop on water and air quality considerations where Dr. Roger Glick from the city of Waco, as well as Ryan McNamee attended and gave their comments on water and air quality in the county. It was very helpful. And then we received our updates on the grant activities.
thank you much. Any questions on TAC activities? Okay, moving on to update and discussion. Really, honestly, the reason why we're here today from the tech dot. Clayton's going to be here to give us the significant highway construction update within the Waco metro area. Welcome, welcome.
All right, starting with our Spring Valley project. Biggest thing to note here is we recently made a traffic switch from Old Temple to Hewitt Drive on that job. Big Creek's currently working on the demo of the west half of the old pavement there, along with working on permanent pavement from Old Temple up to Hewitt Drive. Still tracking to that late fall 2024 completion for the project. Our 434 University Park's widening. Again, the big focus is the widening on the south half of the roadway, constructing the new bridge there at Primrose Creek. Looking at getting traffic moved over to that new half of the roadway and the new bridge this summer. That'll allow us to complete the remaining half of the bridge through the end of the calendar year, but still on track for that completion end of the year. All the mall, if you want to go through the aerials. These are older photos, so apologies, but here at Magby, we're primarily working on the median islands, curb ramps, and signal cutovers. Expect that to wrap up mid-May. The next slide. Here, primarily working on cleanup. You see sod going down on the main lanes, getting vegetation established, and then just in general, filter up, cleanup, punch list type items here. At Beverly, both of these U-turns are now opened up. A little bit of concrete riprap, vegetation and cleanup here as well. Same thing in the industrial and Imperial area. There's a little bit of riprap to pour, primarily on the, I guess what would be the south half of the roadway, kind of in front of Richard Carr, along with getting vegetation established, but just punch list items here. Oxygen Depot, we'll have the U-turn closest to Allen Samuels open up actually tomorrow, assuming the weather holds up for us tonight. So as of tomorrow, all U-turns will be open on the project. Again, and then just a little bit of cleanup, riprap, vegetation in this area. And up at 84 is just general cleanup. That old detour pavement has since been removed, and getting sod established in these areas. Just a couple of other projects to note that are coming up and starting. We've got a State Highway 6 mill and inlay project. That's primarily from Riesel down into Robertson County. Actually started work on it this week. It'll run likely through the end of the calendar year, pretty long project. But then also in Bellmead, starting on a resurfacing project on Bellmead Drive and Loop 340. Knife River is contractor on that job. Should be starting next week with some lane closures on 340 to upgrade guard fence to current safety standards. Again, looking to have that one wrapped up by this fall.
What are the limits of that project?
The Bellmead Drive.
Yeah.
So the Bellmead Drive section is from the interstate to 84, just that small section. Loop 340 is from Old Dallas to 84.
Any other questions?
Questions?
Clay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Moving on to work group updates. Do we have any MPO work groups that would like to give an update on recent activities?
So the only meeting we had was the connected automated vehicle, which was yesterday. And during that meeting, we discussed a white paper that the connected automated vehicle group is working on. And that white paper will be instrumental in making sure that as the NEVI funding comes along, that those funds are directed accordingly. And as the white paper is completed, we'll bring it to the policy board for your consideration so that we are prepared for any NEVI funding that becomes available with charging infrastructure primarily. But at the same time, we're also figuring out how do we have the CAB work group work more closely with the Smart Network Corridor project and the RAISE grant that we have going. And so we had a meeting yesterday. We will have the next meeting on July 17th. And we also will have the bike and pedestrian work group meeting on May 15th. And at that time, we'll have more updates.
Any questions, comments? All right, we will now move on to the MPO monthly report.
So let's go to the next one. Right now, we are in the public comment period of the new tip for 2025-2028. And the projects, we want to recap that all the projects that are being considered are going to be included for construction are I-35 4C for 2025, Twin Bridges for 2025, Spur 298 for 2026, and McLaughlin, Highway 6 at McLaughlin for 2027. And these projects total 371.4 million, of which 121.2 million are the Category 2 funds. Transit projects for the same TIP timeframe will total 35.8 million, which will include maintenance, ADA operating expenses, passenger amenities, bus purchases, as well as short-range planning. Next slide, please. These projects, as we discussed earlier as part of the MTP process, are the same ones which are right now under the PE and right-of-way phases. And right now the total allocation 18.4 million. And these are the projects that we discussed earlier. And these funds for the PE and right-of-way are being allocated with TxDOT as the policy, as was requested by the policy board in earlier meetings.
Okay. The next regularly scheduled MPO policy board meeting is scheduled for May 16th at 1:30 here. But please remember, there's also the special called MPO policy board meeting scheduled for Monday, April 29th, 8:30 a.m. at the Dr. Major Development Center downtown Waco. Extremely important meeting. We need at least 10 of us here. We need 10 warm bodies. You don't have to be in your best mind or even your best self. Maybe just kind of, if you need to come casually, we'll take that too. But just, we need 10 warm bodies to vote of the policy board members. So God bless, hope to see you all there. Does anyone have a future agenda item they'd like to be considered? All right, I will now read our hearing of visitor script followed by Daniela and Espanol. At this time, we provide an opportunity for the public to address the MPO policy board on any item of MPO business not identified on this agenda. Would anyone here like to speak?
En este momento brindamos la oportunidad al público de dirigirse a la Junta de Políticas de la MPO sobre cualquier asunto relacionado con los negocios de la MPO que no esté identificado.
Any registered speakers and anyone here to speak? We will open and close the hearing of visitors at 2:14. Being no further business, we will adjourn the meeting at the same time. All right, thank you all. Appreciate it. Hope to see you early in the morning.
I think it's the chairman's responsibility for breakfast.
For the breakfast tacos. Okay, let me. Okay, that's what was that historic role. Special call meeting breakfast taco. Captain. Okay. Oh, do you have a second?
Yeah.
Good.